Hello everybody, this is Bernhard aka Fedibull.com, and today I'm going to release my final tutorial about the automotive shot. What you can see here I created. You will find the entire project file to download at Fedibull.com, and yeah, I would say we can jump straight into that. I'm going to show you how I was using basically all the cinematic camera shots, how I was using the assets, and how I bring in things, how my pipeline is, what the project settings are, and so on. Shading, lighting, material setups, everything is included. And yeah, you have the scene files. You should be able to really follow all those steps. And of course, if you download the project file, then it's great that you can look through all the different maps. You will find also here, so all the different levels, animation 1, 2, 3, car scene, and so on, demos for packaging, because I also show you how you can package this for the game. Basically, you can run it as you can see here. This is absolutely gameplay with music and audio. You can also, of course, use this as a third-person shooter game and can launch it as well. But before I go into that, I want to basically go through the basic setup and steps. First of all, I'd like to thank Epic. Epic released the so-called Automotive Beach scene for free. So if you haven't known that before, that's amazing. That's what I have been using. There is also the Automotive Material Pack that is also for free. But the good news is you don't need to download anything from anywhere extra, because everything is included. The full package is included. All the material shaders, all the assets is in this scene file provided for you. So let's get started maybe with the lighting. As we all know, and I showed this in my previous tutorial, in my first one, that I always have been a huge fan of actually using HDRI backdrops. And also, as you can see here in this scene file, I can actually remove the HDRI, and then you can see that we have a nice sun and sky system setup, okay, which really looks very, very good. And you could also use that. By the way, also the volumetric cloud system and fog system, I'm going to release a tutorial how you do that as well. I was running very successful tests already previously, but didn't have any more time to put any efforts in it or to like create a tutorial. So, but as you can see, HDRI backdrop, if you haven't seen my first tutorial, which I go back here to my playlist. If you don't know my Unreal Engine tutorials playlist, I highly recommend going through all those tutorials, because you see my initial setup in which I clearly explain how you can set up the retracing. Then you find my first tutorial here, and I make this probably larger that you can see better on the screen, which was the first automotive tutorial in which I describe the exact process. Close this here. So the exact process of setting up the HDRI backdrop and how you match it with the sunlight. That's very, very important. And if you haven't seen my cinematography tutorial, I'm talking here really about camera work and cinematography work. So, and how I basically use cinematic cameras and the sequencer and the cine camera, so that you can combine all those things. So if you haven't seen that, I would say definitely check out the playlist, because I think it builds already a very, very strong foundation if you check all those tutorials out, and then you can follow up much, much easier, which I'm talking about here today. So anyways, if you press the G button, of course, and you look at your HDRI backdrop, right, then you can see this is nothing else than a dome. And basically, also when you want to speed up, of course, here, your movement in the viewport, just click here, up right, camera speed, and change this. But as you can see, this is nothing else than a projection. It's a high dynamic range projection. That's why it's called HDRI. And that also helps you a lot if you are going to use it for reflections or even GI. But as you can see, you have here a so-called projection center node, and when you move this up or down, you can actually influence the pivot point of the projection center. So that gives you more power to project anything what you like. Of course, you can load any different HDRI here, just get some for free. I also put this in the video tutorial where I'm usually downloading those free HDRI high-res images. And this is what you do. This is how you set it up in the background when you use an HDR backdrop. So once you have this HDRI here, right, you can see it here, it's called HDR Sunrise. You basically drag and drop it into the HDR backdrop, and then you can exchange it and lighting will be adjusted accordingly. So what is very, very important is, of course, also, as you can see, it's not just the HDRI. When we turn this off, you can clearly see, even if I undo all my other actors, or like remove them, and go back here to my camera speed of like 4 or something like this, then you can see that we have the sunlight coming in, and we have also softer shadows. So you have multiple options. I want to get into that, how you can set up the sunlight. But first of all, as you can see, this is nothing else than a directional light. And when you look at those settings, I usually change the settings from the directional sunlight accordingly in the intensity that I can match it with my camera or an HDRI backdrop. Keep in mind, when you start usually using a directional light, or let's say as sun and skylight, which is nothing else than a combination of multiple factors, and then it starts usually in a very, very high intensity, like I think 75,000 lux or lux, however you want to call it, you know. And so it will blow out a lot of stuff, of course, but it would be physically correct. The question is just always, you know, in terms of lighting, do you want to adjust the sunlight or do you want to adjust HDRI? Keep in mind, at the end, it doesn't matter what you choose, what you prefer. What really matters is that the values are matching and that they are all getting together, and that you see, hey, this looks real and this kind of like really makes sense. Okay, this is very, very important. That's what I look at all the time. And you know, as an artist as well, I have a lot of technical background. Even if I heard in the past, I don't think that Bernhard knows actually what he's doing. He was not in video game industry. He doesn't know a specific term or whatever. Hey, look, I honestly don't give a damn about terms, because like however you want to call it, you name it in here different than you name it in an offline retracing software, whatever. At the end, what really matters is that you have a strong foundation and that you understand what you are doing and how things are combined. And also as a user and not as a developer, for me it's much more important to get really an output and to get results. How the code is developed in the background, that really doesn't matter for me so much, because usually I work together with developers, and then you're really strong, and then you can say, look, you create the code, and then let's talk about anything else, right? So, but as you can see, what is important here is also that you can clearly see that you have also a source angle. And when, look at this, when you change the source angle, then you can clearly see that you can soften those shadows, right? And for me, of course, it's very, very important when the sun is like super sharp with the basic setup. This is a too sharp shadow for me. And then I just basically make also those adjustments until I know, hey, this shadow looks kind of like pretty cool when the sun is at this kind of like height and it goes down, and then you see also the rays are going like through the rails here, okay? Also, light shaft is on slightly. You might not see it here in the preview on the video. But basically that means when you scroll down here, you have light shaft You know, right now I have it at 0.01, but when you look at this, and you can see there is a shadow, right? So this is basically a pretty cool feature, and if the environment fog is stronger, you will also see it much stronger. But also because people ask me, do you really set this all up? Usually I do. I use all the options and features that are available and I can use for my benefits. So to pimp the shot, so to speak. So, but as you can see, if you turn this off, then all you can see right now is basically the rest of it, which is right now also I have, you can see here a little bit the exponential height fog. We have the reflection from basically the sphere, the sky that is out. I actually also need to look if I even have here a skylight set up. No, but I basically go through this with you also step by step. So what is interesting, first of all, let me save all this here, save current as tutorial, because I don't want to delete all my other stuff of what I was doing before. And what I want to show you is also when you change here the HDRI, the post-process volume, etc. I want to show you what impact it has and what I usually do. So first of all, when I set up my post-process volume, I always go into my exposure settings and I set it to manual because I want to have full control. I don't want to have just like an auto exposure, right? So once this is set up, I also want to make sure that, you know, in my post-process volume settings, I want to check reflections. I want to check the retracing. And I got before many times the question, Bernhard, are you using screen space reflections or are you going to use retraced reflections? I use both. Now, people are curious and say, what are you talking about? But let me explain. I use usually the screen space reflections for runtime for the video game. So if I really want to optimize it, like what you can see here, right? And you also can see the audio is in the background, music is running. This is gameplay, this is runtime, and once it's baked, and yes, I also basically do the light build and everything. This is basically the version of it. You see it's getting very clean, very nice, it's noise free. And you get like 60 frames per second running on full HD. This is always my goal, my target performance I'm hitting. But let's say if you don't want to use screen space reflections and you say like, you know what, I don't care about the game performance, then of course you can also switch here and you can say I want to use real retraced reflections. But as you can see right now, if I basically try to move around, you can already see that I lost all my frames. But keep in mind, look at my settings in the retracing reflections. I have 16 samples because this would be really for like rendering, and I also have here the bounces. Now, as you can see, if you reduce the bounces, you don't have enough bounces in the reflection, and then it gets dark. So that's the same with translucency, because you have to understand that screen space reflection is literally a fake. It's super powerful for you know, like performance, and retracing is more accurate. Sometimes it can look better. It doesn't have to. For mirrors and whatever, if you want to have a really clean and non-distorted reflection, of course that's the way to go. I also prefer that. But you also have to make sure that you set up then everything accordingly, because once you do that, you also need to have for the translucency the same amount in the reflection bounces, because if you don't have that, you know, it doesn't bounce enough, and then your headlights, your front lights or whatever, it just turns black. So my experience right now using real-time retracing reflections and for translucency and GI, basically for runtime for a video game all together in a high resolution, so it's really killing it. For a video game, I would not do that. For VR, it doesn't work at all. But I have to say, of course, if you say you don't care about performance and you really would like to render super nice shots and everything should be physically correct and super accurate, then you can do that, right? So as you can see, if you increase the bounces or if you lower that, you run already into those issues. You can of course also reduce the max roughness, and also influence how the reflection will look like. But as you can see, this is really up to you, and you need to further go then inside and also change, of course, then the translucency options as well. And also you have to look at the shaders, because if you create a shader fully for translucency, or if it's a shader you create opaque for like screen space reflections, there is also a difference in the shader creation. But I can't get in this tutorial too deep into all those things, because it would be a way too long. But when you go with reflections, it's totally fine if you go with screen space reflections at the beginning. And what I also recommend people is, before you even turn on any retracing, before you even start retracing anything, I always recommend people just first start with no retracing at all and learn the basics in terms of shaders, in terms of lighting. If you're coming from the offline world and you understand, retracing, render engines, doesn't matter if it's RenderMan, if it's V-Ray, Redshift, Corona, whatever you have been using. In the past, I always told people, students, whatever, if you want to do a photorealistic shot, you don't have to have retracing on. You don't have to have GI on. Keep it this way. You can create shaders and materials and the super nice setup that looks photoreal if you understand shading, if you understand lighting, if you combine it, if you have the right values. So you don't even need that. But of course, it can pimp your shots. It can increase the quality. And I will do an extended video tutorial just for retracing. Also, keeping in mind, when you do that in the project settings, you have to have retracing turned on, of course, here. Okay. And you have to run it here in DirectX 12. If you haven't seen my retracing tutorial, how to set it up correctly, it's also in my playlist. I highly recommend doing that and watching it. It's also fairly long, but it's very, very important that you also have the foundation. So as you can see, in this particular scene file, we are going with screen space reflections, very powerful, very fast. And that means also here all those settings in the retracing reflections, as soon as you switch from screen space to retracing, right? You can also see the impact, how it looks like, how everything is changing. You don't need those settings anymore, the retracing reflections, because you basically turn them off. It's then untrue in the code, and nobody really cares. What is maybe important in the settings for the screen space reflections is you have also the intensity and you have the quality. And you can also see, if you change here the intensity, right, you can really see in real time what impact it actually has to the reflection itself. Okay, so I of course use usually 100%, because if you don't, then you see it through the glass here a little bit, that intensity is of course changing. You are losing some shape definition. But also keep in mind, at the end, it's really up to you as an artist as well. Maybe you want to say, I don't want to have it fully, right, reflective in the intensity, but that's what I choose. The quality, keep in mind, is not like a percentage. It's not like 1 or 100 is the max. I usually go up like to 1,000 to make sure that if I have screen space reflections on, that I get really clean reflections, as you can see here, right? And of course the max again, I don't know why I always go back to German a little bit, but the max roughness, of course, is I want to get full range of my roughness in the reflections from my materials and shaders, and that's why I turn it on maximum to 1. Okay, so what is also important is, of course, the fact that in the world settings, I basically use force no pre-computed lighting. So that basically means you turn off all the stuff what you usually use for like baking and building the light, you don't really need this. So that's my workflow. I turn everything off at the beginning because I say, like, you know what, I don't need to bake anything at this point. I just really focus in real time setting up here my scene, and I keep going and working on my materials and shaders and the lighting. So let's go back to the lighting setup, and I basically want to show you also what you can do here and what we have in here, from sky atmospheres to sky directional light and so on. But honestly, look at this in the folder lighting, from the HDR backdrop to whatever we have here. I can delete literally everything, okay, and start from scratch and show you how you can set this up super quick, super nice, and super easy in different ways or in another way. And one thing is also the so-called sun and sky system. And this is what I was talking before. Look at this. You drop this in, and you basically have a full rig setup using the sun and sky system. I also wanted to mention something in the plugins, the built-in plugins. You need to check sun position calculator that this is enabled. If you don't do that, you will not have it available if you started just the game package. But as you can see, that sun and sky system is basically nothing else than a combination of, so there is a compass mesh. I don't need it, I don't really use it. But you have then the skylight in it, you have a directional light, which is the sunlight, and you have a sky atmosphere, okay? And that works in a combination. And as you can see now, this looks different because the entire environment changed. And now you also can see what a huge impact the environment has. But I want to show you how you can literally use the sun and sky system in real time and make accordingly adjustments. You see here, you have the latitude you can change in real time, and then you have the longitude you can change in real time, and you can get immediately a complete different look. I mean, look at this. If now the sun is in the back position, you get a complete different shot. This would be maybe a morning shot according to the time zone, the latitude, the month, whatever you want to pick. I mean, you make here changes. This is January, for example, and the day and the light is changing completely. But look at also the beautiful actually horizon line you get here in this shot. One thing that is very, very important is you can change all these settings here in the sun and sky top actor in the settings, and then underneath they are all linked. You can change here basically the skylight and the directional light settings. So let's go to the directional light. The directional light is nothing else than a directional light. And as you can see here, by default, it's 75,000. It's so small, and I need glasses of 750,000, but it's very high, it's very intense. And what I do is basically I bring those values down, and as you can see, you have auto exposure on. That means the lens in the editor is adjusting accordingly. But the reason why I do this is later on also in the post-process volume, when you go now here, and I also deleted that. You see the post-process volume is also gone. And I'll show you how to set this up here. So you get on the visual effects, post-process volume, pull it out, you unbound it, okay, so that it's clearly to see everywhere all the effects you have. And then, of course, I'm going to change my exposure to manual. So now you have manual control, there is no auto exposure, anything on, and then you can basically decide, do you want to overexpose, do you want it, underexpose or whatever. So the exposure settings is then totally up to you. But this is just a quick, I would say almost a cheat code for like a camera, for a physical accurate camera, So also what you can see is when you have the directional light from the angle below your horizon line, and then basically don't have no more direct sunlight hit, the shadows are literally gone, okay? So what I usually do is, and this is really up to you as an artist, how you like to do the lighting, right? I mean, this horizon line on the car looks pretty nice, but I have to say this is really up to you how you like to do the lighting. And I basically say, you know what, go into your settings here and change it accordingly. Do you want to bring it up? Do you want to lower it? Do you want to make it more intense? As you can see, this is really up to you. Now again, for the shadow, if this is very intense here, you can also bring this down, but usually I keep this thing up at a static value, okay? The sun value maybe at 20 or something. And then I go into the post-process volume and adjust here accordingly the intensity again, the exposure. And basically maybe this is 11 or 12, as you can see, something like this. But then in the sun and sky system, I basically go inside the directional light and also change then the source angle or the softness of the shadow. That's very, very cool if you can basically also make all those adjustments and then see how you can soften basically that shadow. I mean, look at this, 50 is kind of like really crazy in this particular case, and for this angle, like 10 feels like pretty real, right? It looks pretty good even when the sun hits the tire here, right? It looks pretty good. In terms of the sun system, whatever you like to do, this has something to do then with cinematography or photography, of course. You can see it here right now. If you're looking through your lens directly through the sun, you have quite a very difficult shot because either way it's getting under or overexposed. But if you basically bring your camera to the back, then you can see this would be a nice shot for the car from the back, right? And that would be a possibility. But anyways, I want to keep going and show you more here in the lighting setup. Because what I usually do is also, you see here that you have the skylight that is included, but it basically captures the scene and I don't even do anything in here. And then you also have the atmosphere, and the atmosphere for sure has an impact to everything, because this is the ground color, you know, that is used from the ground that is bouncing off. Especially if you use the GI, it's visible. But the biggest impact, of course, is here, as you can see, is basically the atmosphere light, okay, the color, because you can definitely change this and make also color adjustments accordingly. And as you can see, when you change here the sky, what you can do with it. I kind of love it because in terms of digital photography, compositing, and creating different moods and looks, it's kind of phenomenal because you get immediate results. You can play with colors a lot, and you can actually see what it is doing to your shot. So I kind of really like that. What else? So this is basically it for the sun and sky system. And then what's very important is the directional light. If you want to use environment sky as well, so the atmosphere, you kind of have to activate it in here, and I forgot actually what it is, but I think it was, I have to look it up, atmosphere and fog and sun. It is checked that it's influencing it. So let me show you what I usually do. I basically create also here a so-called exponential height fog. Do you see that? So basically I just dropped it in. And then when you have this exponential height fog, you have similar settings that it gives it, especially on the beach or on the ocean, right? This additional kind of like photoreal touch, because you can see it here very nice. It is kind of like hazy, and it gives you this kind of like look that the fog, washes out a little things. And I mean, of course, you can make here also same adjustments in the color. You can see it here. You can go crazy with the colors. And of course, you can also change the height fall off. And you can also change the density. So look, this is 0, and then you can crank it up, okay? And of course, if you go and change the colors, then you can really fit this to something where you feel like, yeah, this is what I like. This is very subtle, or this is what I dislike, okay? So this is really, really up to you. You can see that it's influencing the environment, it's then influencing the reflection and everything. But as I said before, if you go also into the sum, this is all up to you. This is really all what you want to do, how you want to set up the shot, how you feel like, hey, this looks really good. And then it's the combination in the post-process volume also to change then your exposure. Maybe at the beginning also from the exposure settings, it's maybe not even bad to keep the auto exposure on at the beginning, because then you don't need to go in all the time and make the proper adjustments. But for my final shots, I want to have always full control, and then for sure I set this up as I want to set it up. Okay. So as you can see, environment, super, super important. Look at this, how everything already changed, right? And then to brighten this up or to work on the environment, this is really up to you. You can change the look here dramatically, right? And if you haven't seen any other tutorials from me, I go back here and make a little, advertising. But you see also here, I did some videos in which I basically also show like a retracing for a Minecraft video game, or you have maybe seen here building the natural environments. That is basically architecture visualization. But look at that. That was also very important for me to get a specific look, to make a change and make adjustments to the environment that I get basically this look and this feel. And at the end, of course, I make color grading adjustments also in real time through the post-process volume. And how I do this is here the same post-process volume. You basically have here like all the different lens settings, camera settings, but as you can see, color grading, right? From the white balance, which you can change the temperature. Do you want to make it warm? Do you want to make it cool? You have global saturation. You can totally oversaturate it. You can make it much more subtle. You can go into contrast. You can go into gamma settings. And of course, what I really like is you can change every channel individually. Okay, this is really cool, because if you change now, for instance, the gamma in the red channel or in the green channel, you can really do the color corrections and the adjustments accordingly, and you can set it up and make the shots more like cinematic, right? And maybe if you have been using After Effects, Magic Bullet, or any other color grading tools from Nuke to Fusion or whatever, my experience was no matter what studio I was working, everybody is a little overdoing it and thinks like maybe it's super complex, but at the end, honestly, if you have full control about gamma, contrast, saturations, midtones, highlights for each channel, that's all what you need in order to mimic almost any look you can find, or I can basically copy any look I can get here in real time. And that's why I also avoid going anymore into a lot of comping work into Fusion or like even Nuke. Because if it's real time, it's so much more fun. It goes quick, it goes faster, and I can render shots like much quicker. Especially for previous work and camera work, there's no question about it. And I think also, folks, that previous will get so powerful and so strong that the previous artists are going probably to crush then the lighting and shading artists. Because if somebody is really good here as a previous artist in real time and he understands shading, lighting, and rendering, and look development, then you're gonna kill it because you can do it all. And I show you then later how I was setting up also the Star Wars shot that is also here provided in that scene file. So, but what is next? We captured literally this kind of stuff for the lighting setup. And again, exponential height fog, you can go in here and feel free, you can go crazy and make proper adjustments, and maybe you want to have something like this Silent Hill, who knows, something totally crazy or night and creepy, whatever you would like to do. There are many features and many settings you can go through and check it all out and test it. This looks kind of like also crazy, right? Like apocalypse, zombie apocalypse or whatever happened. But anyways, so I would say this is the first thing here. What I wanted to show you is the lighting. As you can see, there is not a lot going on. It's just what it is. The next thing in lighting, oh yeah, I forgot. In lighting, of course, what I also wanted to bring in is the HDRI. And keep in mind, the HDRI is the same thing. You need to activate it if you start from scratch. You need to go in on the settings and plugins, built in, and you need to type in HDRI and make sure it's enabled. If you don't do that and you start from scratch a project and you go to your lights, it will not show up here, right? But I show you also there is a standard HDRI and projection here. You can just drop it in. You can change the radio size, you see here, and now this is like in the garden backyard, right? And then you can also change again the projection center. Of course, you can also double click and change the resolution from the HDRIs. This one here is 4096 by 248. And you can also go and change the resolution. I don't do it in here right now, but you can also see then if you set it to mip-map, no mip-maps, you get full high-res quality up till 8K. I have been using, it's not really any problem. And you can do a lot with it. I mean, look at this look. It's a complete different look just by adjusting the environment. And as I said before, you know, just play around. If you want to exchange here the HDRI, just drag and drop the other one in it, and then you see what I was doing. Also, as you can see in this quick one here, I didn't match the sunlight to the HDRI. And I showed you in my previous tutorial, I would really recommend go back in my first tutorial, which you can find here in my playlist. It's up here, it's called UE4 Unreal Retracing HDR Backdrop Camera Render Settings Automotive Tutorial. Pretty long name, but I set up everything and I explain exactly how you can match those things. As you can see, it's very important that you match things, because if values don't match, if the position is not matching, it doesn't look as real as you can see here when you drop it in just quickly. Okay. So, but next thing, basically, I can go in, I can say, let's delete the exponential. We can also delete the HDRI. It's not needed. Boom, everything is gone. And even so, at the beginning, it looks really good. It's okay. Of course, what we can do, but like I said before, in the sun settings, you can play around and you can change the settings that maybe the sun direction is coming from somewhere else, that you can also see it then in the front lights, okay, that they are crisp and clean. So I also wanted to mention something. When I was downloading the free scene file, then I made some adjustments here. You can see there are decals and everything. They're kind of like positioned all over the place here. This is basically an audio cue. I show you also how I did this. But all those decals you can use on the ground, or like here, those stripes, right? But I noticed that I saw scaling issues. Okay, I mean, it's a great, it's great to get these assets for free. But what I learned is you always need to make some minor adjustments. For me, the concrete and asphalt was just like too large, or like those decals have been too large as well. But as you can see, you just go in and scale them and make them smaller, okay, and make accordingly those adjustments. And the good stuff is that because everything is in real time, you know, I don't need to go back in and model something crazy, and I don't need to worry about texture maps or whatever, and go in and start painting again. No, I just look at this. It just make those adjustments. And by the way, you can change your parking lot like super quick and fast. It really doesn't matter. But as you can see, in terms of building something or, you know, creating, doing some level design work, it's really up to the artist what you prefer. But I also like to have a slick kind of like workflow and make sure that whatever I touch, it goes quick and it goes fast. Okay, because, you know, I mean, that's the whole purpose. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. So, and if I fixed a few ones in the scale, what I liked here, then I also look into the shader. And of course, when you look at this road shader, in my opinion, the tiling was just like too large. And then I can't remember anymore if I changed the UV tile in the U direction to 1 and then here 1, something like this, and boom, save it and you're done. And then it looks smaller in the scaling and more accurate. So those are adjustments I just tweak on the fly, whatever I see. If there is a patch, you know, and it's just like too crazy, and then I also see like, oh, wait a minute, the resolution just doesn't work out, I basically go in and make all those proper adjustments, move things around where needed, and so on. So very, very important, I think, as well to mention. Then in terms of assets, those assets, what I showed you, of course, I love to use Bridge from Quixel, Megascans. So this is here. The reason why is because it's all free. And so I show you also real quick how that works. There is, again, a video tutorial in which I show precisely how to set up Quixel. You will find it then. I'll put it also in my playlist. But I just want to show you how quickly I do things. So once you downloaded some assets from Quixel, right, it really doesn't matter. You can basically search for 3D assets, 3D plans, and so on. But once you downloaded any of those assets, maybe even in here, I bring in this toy, right? Then I can say, hey, export this to my basically project. You can specify the texture map size, 2K, 4K, whatever you like. You can also use statues like this. I show you this one here maybe as well. You just click export and it's exporting it to your project file. Of course, you have to set up everything accordingly, but just look at this. So like this one here, okay, I just export this and bring it in. And the cool stuff about Megascan and Quixel is you see now it's importing it. It's all for free, only if you use it for Unreal. Okay, so you need to pay if you want to use it for any other software package, but that's what I don't do anyways because I use it for my final pieces. And then as you can see here, look, if I need another rock somewhere, I just drop it in. Right, huge, but it's great for level design because you can do things super quick and super fast. And I don't know, maybe, you know, for set extensions or digital set extensions or in general virtual production, this is great because you can use whatever you want to use. Of course, make sure you save all your stuff, the assets, you bring it in. What I usually also do is maybe then tweaking some materials, of course, for color adjustments, etc. But as you can see, it goes super quick, super fast, and they have a lot of assets already provided, and that's what I am using. I am also using, and I gave reviews and video tutorials about it, about Substance. Substance, unfortunately, is not for free. But when people ask me, for instance, also the front light here, right, the glass, the refraction, well, like in the tail light, basically here, how I do this, well, you can go to Substance source as well. And then if you have the Substance player, like what I have, that's for free. But Substance, keep in mind, is not for free. If you want to have assets like that, you need to have a monthly subscription. But you basically download then these assets, and then here, just within the player, you can export opacity maps, normal maps, etc., and then build your own shader. But of course, there are also from Substance some basic shaders provided. There are some hiccups. I'm not as happy with Substance, of course, like as I am in the shader and material creation as I am with Quixel Bridge. But I can build also anything I want to relatively quick, and I can make my proper adjustments. But I'm also not going into the details here. See, maybe here, this would be maybe nice to basically send it to the support team. They have some broken UVs here on this scan. But so you see, even they are not perfect. But so this is how I do the assets, because you can use basically anything, literally anything, like boxes, 3D assets, shaders, and materials. And then I show you also, of course, shaders you can use. It really doesn't matter because it's not just 3D assets. You can also use, of course, materials, create instances. What I like also here in terms of Bridge is that you can specify, do you want to have different LODs, so the level of detail, what's the resolution of your texture maps and so on. But once you have this all set up, I mean, I have to say it's really super cool, because look at this, you have all the different options, the different possibilities, and basically go in and make changes accordingly, and then put also texture maps on it and whatever. So this starts freaking out here, but you get the point, right? In terms of shaders, first of all, I'm using also the free Automotive material pack. So once again, if you launch Epic Launcher, you should always try to have, I have gigabytes, crazy gigabytes of projects and files. I have like a total of 5 different SSD drives already, because it's a massive amount of data. But it makes your life so much easier if you have really good assets, and you can just add it to a project, and then you don't need to worry about it so much. But for example here, what I also wanted to show is the Automotive. As you can see, you just add it to the projects, and then you have like all the super nice Automotive materials. And again, if I just pull in here like a sphere, right, and as you can see, I pop this up here, and I just go in material instances, and I drag and drop here a material shader, car paint blue, car paint green, or whatever, and it just looks really amazing. And of course, data preparation is very, very important. I mentioned this before in other of my tutorials, that whatever you use, whenever you go in, you need to make sure that you unwrap your UVs. Very, very important, because if you don't unwrap the UVs, you will get some shader issues. Okay, so if you get any splotches or noise or whatever, that's usually the problem, that you have not been unwrapping the geometry accordingly. And my workflow, as I told you before, is I'm using DataSmith, using different software packages. More and more, I have to say, leaning on Blender, because it's also free. I love free tools. And as you know, I always give everything away for free for all the students as well. And people ask me, Bernhard, it's crazy, you give everything away for free. And some people always said, you're insane, because then everybody can do it. Not really. I never panic about giving away knowledge. I actually believe in helping and giving. I love it, because I don't know, that's what it feels good, but that's also what I like to do, working with you guys. And at the end, it's anyways the artist. There are always like assets you can share, and it's for sure like you can show some technical things, but at the end, it's you, the artist, who has to have a vision and an idea and then you need to create it. You know, it doesn't matter. I mean, even if you have all these assets, but you know, you can't put something together, then you know, like, well, what's the whole point? I don't know. It's so weird. I always had this in my 30 years in my career. When people know something and you work in bigger corporations, then it looks like people don't want to share, but I'm just the opposite. I love to teach. I love being a tutor. I just like it, and I just want to get better, and you know, that's what I love to do. So, but as you can see here as well, you can use, of course, different materials and different shaders, make it blue, pimp it, do whatever you want to do. And I'm also not going here into shader creation because, of course, that can be also very deep. As you can see, that tutorial is basically a big general making of where I scratch all those topics, because there are many, many things to consider what I was doing in order to get to this point that it looks cool, or it looks like how I wanted it. Also, what I wanted to let you know is why I chose the gray shader on the car was nothing else, because I like color grading. I look at colors, and I felt like this brown tinted color felt just perfectly good for a cinematic look to the concrete, to the wall, to the gold of my little logo, and the background and everything, and the sun. Okay, so I felt like it's gives it a more cinematic touch. And when you look in cinematography and people who are responsible for the dress and everything, you might not see now in this shot something where you have a green car. Okay, so because that is a different color palette. Even so, looks kind of cool. I like different colors, but you know. Anyways, so what is, of course, also a killer, right, for any designer and everybody who is in product visualization? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Once you have something set up like this, you can send this to your client with an audio file in the background, and that's what I'm going to introduce here right now as well, in which you can talk and explain the whole thing. You can send it to them, and they can visualize and see your product in real time. So why just send your client? So why do you want to send your client basically just a still shot anymore? I don't get that. I had so many discussions with so many different studios. You know, studios usually hire me for, you know, really workflow and pipelines, integration of real-time technology for real-time ray tracing, games, level design, all kinds of things, optimization. As you know, I'm also a TD, but most of it, what I like as a creative director, is also like, is cinematic work, is for sure lighting, shading, camera work, and setting everything up accordingly, and training people, teaching that, and working constantly on a super optimized, efficient workflow, because, you know, you really have to work on this. When I have been working previously for companies, and when people do not understand that you can set up a really slick workflow in terms of asset creation and optimization, you can't work. Everything is dead. You kind of kill the whole pipeline, and you will never perform as fast and as good, and you will never get the results, because things are just broken. And you need to work from scratch in a very, very efficient way. And you need to understand the whole pipeline. It's like a chef in a kitchen, right? If the chef in the kitchen doesn't know how to cook, well, the whole kitchen will go down under. There is no question, you know. So that's why you have good chefs, and you have chefs, they really suck. And then this is, of course, the downfall of any freaking studio. But anyways, I have been in this business since almost 20 years. I know what am I doing. I have been working in the industry for VFX, in the entertainment industry for film. I have been working in the tech industry, you know, in the automotive, aviation, and so on. I know what needs to be done and how you have to pull things together and execute. But, you know, sometimes, you know, as it is, studios might have their own politics. Anyways, so Talking about materials, as you can see, it's funny because you can even assign it to the ground floor. Look at this. It's kind of cool, right? Because look how creative you can become. You can go in here and you can say, you know what, I create something the world hasn't seen before, right? You can go crazy. Like you could pimp the whole thing and say like, I just do a super crazy colorful world because everybody's anyway so depressed these days because of the COVID situation, right? So you want to make something super clean, and maybe it doesn't have to be photoreal. You just go nuts and you go crazy, and that's what I like about being an artist, because you have all those options. And what I like about so much working in real time is because you can clearly see what options you have just with a few materials. So also what I wanted to show you, Megascans materials, right? Because it's so cool. Of course, the unwrapping is not done in here when you go through the 3D assets. But if you go to surfaces, you have so many options also. And if you go here to bridge, all you have to do is you can delete that. I can go even to my local and then say all I want is surfaces, right? And then look at this. I can basically go and say, hey, this black brick, maybe that looks cool. I just export it. Or you have here concrete, checker floor, something like this. I can export it, right? You have so many variations. It's just nuts. It's really crazy, right? So once you exported it, you see it's bring it in. You see here I have the gold. I have here now my concrete checkerboard. And I also show you what I like about Quixel Megascan is that they already created an instance where the tiling and the UV offset is also included. So if you want to change that, as you can see, you might be familiar, then you can change immediately the tiling. I can also change, of course, the normal intensity if I want to crank it up. And so on. So this is what I like about Quixel a lot, because yeah, I mean, look at that. You don't even need to create any complex shaders anymore, because you can use those instances and they just look really phenomenal. Of course, you have to adjust the tiling. There's no other question. But look at this. Just by doing that, how quick I can actually get here basically like a preview and see like, okay, this is how it could look like. I mean, for look development, making decisions, CMF, so color, material, and finish, so CMF studies, it's just phenomenal, right? Anyways, you can pick quick something and reassign it back. If you had other assets here that was that concrete, then you go back and assign this one. As you can see, it's, yeah, I just love it. It's amazing how quick you can do something, right? Okay, so that was it about materials and glass. We spoke about it. Also, of course, when you look at that glass shader, I think most of the time people have been asking me and have been very, very interested, Bernhard, how did you do that? It's actually fairly easy. It's a normal map with a refractive glass. And when you go into the shader, of course, you might see in the notes, oh boy, this is kind of crazy, but it actually isn't. Most important, what you have to understand is how you set up the bump map. And the bump is nothing else than using a normal map. And you know that normal map is usually controlled by an intensity parameter and brought straight into the normal slot of your shader. And also what I recommend you guys, what is really cool, what you can use, there's also an advanced glass pack, which I many times use as well. And you can see here that glass pack is also super cool, because when you go in, you can make like changes like super easy and quick. You see here, that glass is completely clean and has no normal maps on it. But watch this. There are also instance those glass packages. You can have also cracks in it. You know, so like in this one, for example, right? You can see we also have dots in it, right? That's pattern 03A, but all those refractive glass materials can be adjusted with the color. Then you have here the normal map again, and those are all instances. That's freaking cool as well, because you can change already, of course, the refraction, the reflection, the roughness. You can also change the colors, which basically tints already the shaders, right? And there is even one, you might laugh about it, but it's super cool, because first of all, there's also then somewhere the tiling, and if the tiling isn't set up here, I usually go inside and create then a tiling node. But it's tiling normal is actually here. You see, it's like super cool. So you can also use that. But what is also cool is in this glass pack, you find even wet glass, and there is even a rain. That's kind of like also funny. Glass rain number 2, a glass rain number 1. And again, if you assign those shaders, first of all, you always need, once you dragged and dropped it, you need to wait until it's compiled. But also, as you can see on this one here, the water is flowing this direction because I was not setting up the UVs properly. So, and if that is the case, then you see already what I actually was doing badly, or what I wasn't doing correctly. Because as you can see, the water would really drip down, and it's super cool. I mean, I have to say, it's really a lot of fun. Here, there are basically water drops, super cool, but unfortunately also the wrong direction. It's super easy to quick and fix that. You can also change then the UV directions. Here I did it correct on the front shield. You see that? I mean, I think those are features and options that's just super cool, right? I mean, look at this. If you have a rainy day and then you have those water things dribbling down in real time, freaking cool. Yeah, folks also asked me, I didn't finish the interior. So as you can see, I have a few materials here in the interior, but I did not finish any texturing of the interior. I also put in like a radio, because first of all, I wanted to have a Mad Max scene, but you know, you can also use those assets, kind of crazy. Yeah, and you could go in then and use all kinds of different shaders, and then also start shading the interior. You know, if you like that, then you can go in and play and do something. Oops, but I have to say, guys, I did not detach all the necessary components here, so sorry about that. But you know, you can also, I will post a link, download the original car model that was provided. I always forget the name from the artist, but I mention it all the time. Thank you so much for providing this model for free, and I post the download link and the full credits, of course, of the model as well in the description of my video, and then you can go and unwrap and detach the parts, whatever you like, and do everything as you wish. You also can see it here, like there's a lot of details on the engine. Actually, you could basically pimp and start, you know, adding stuff. It's really, really cool, I have to say. So that there's, for that it's not CAD data and it's all modeled by hand. He did a very, very manually, a very, very great job. So that's about it. Basically from here, assets, materials, and shaders. We did the lighting, and now the next thing I would like to show you is, of course, how I do cameras, and I also show you how I do those cameras from scratch, like how I really do these animations. And as you can see, so this is a new basically level. I go in and say, like, you know what, let's create a new camera here. And basically in the cinematics, Cine camera, I basically drag and drop it in, press G. And then as you can see, I created here a bunch of other cameras before, but super roughly I show you how I do things. So first of all, I look through my Cine camera I just created. This is Cine camera number 1. Then I create a new level sequence, and then I drag and drop that camera actor to my basically sequencer. And now I change it and look through my camera here, and as you can see, I have already something cool set up. I have basically a 35mm on my camera, and my current aperture is a 2.8, so very wide open already. If you increase opening it, then also the exposure will change. But before that works, you need to go in and change in your Cine camera. Cine camera 1, I need to find here, first of all, the exposure control. So you need to set this to manual, and then, as you can see, you can make those manual adjustments. That's the fastest and easiest way. If you don't understand camera settings, that's the best way how you can do it super quick. And then in the post-process settings, you want to go to lens exposure and also put into the tracking options the so-called exposure compensation. So now you have full control, and even if you make adjustments to the aperture, you can see it fully reacts like a physical camera does. You have also, of course, the focal point here. That's very, very cool. I also like to change my blades to 5, that my bokeh effect is different. You could also do like vignetting. Of course, I do this sometimes, so to add a little bit vignetting, what I usually do in post, a little bit subtle. You can also add chromatic aberration. I mean, look at all the options and features you have here. Bloom effect, I like convolution, but you can go with the standard and change the intensity and the threshold. Exposure we just did, chromatic aberration, intensity, start offset at 1. Sorry, make this here like blurry. Start offset at 0.1. So, and now you see the chromatic aberration already, right? And if you set the focus, then you can clearly see what is going on here, right? So look at this. If you want to go crazy with the chromatic aberration, do so. I usually, if I do it super, super subtle, because I don't like it if effects are like completely overdone. Then, you know, you get quite like the opposite. It doesn't look better. It looks kind of like worse. So also want to change here maybe the colors, pimp the shot, and whatever here for the windshield, just assign something else. But as you can see, it's super cool, because now you have a camera, you can move around in real time and find the spots, whatever you want to actually work with. It's just super nice. Maybe in the sequencer, also what I do with the Cine cameras is I have the tendency to make this more cinematic. I like to shoot also wide, not just really wide open, how I call it here, with a very low aperture, but you know, a full frame camera is pretty cool. There are some presets for the real full frame chips, of course, but I sometimes even go crazier and do it really like super wide cinematic, right? If you would go to a movie theater, like super crazy, but it gives this whole thing something special, right? It kind of looks super cool. Now look, the chromatic aberration, in my opinion, already overdone, so too strong. And then what I do is I go in and want to change the intensity. You can also, because there are so many options, like always search for it, right? That is usually the better way or the faster way to do it. But you need to know the features and the options. Otherwise, you will have a hard time finding it. So lens, bloom, exposure, chromatic aberration, as you can see here. Okay, intensity, and then I just really bring it down to 0.6, something like this. Even that feels a little bit strong, so 0.4. But as you can see, this is already something, right? By the way, also what I wanted to mention, I like the red and the two color palettes, like red and gold, kind of like super cool too, right? Oh, and by the way, we might want to bring back the shader here for the glass on the front. It looks better. And this is also so beautiful how quickly you can make changes, right? How quickly you can make changes. That's phenomenal. Oh yeah, and by the way, I forgot to tell you also, when I'm using substance, okay, that's what I want to show you here real quick, because I didn't show you in the create maybe here the front class also the reflector, right? The reflector. Then how I do that is nothing else like I go inside, I download the SBSR file, and I made a tutorial about it in the review about substance as well. And then I basically export the normal maps, okay, and then just bring it into the shader. And once you have this normal map and you created a master material, then I instance it. But you can see here basically how it's then set up. And once you created a normal map, you can change, of course, the density or the intensity and everything else you need. But this is exactly how you can also set it up and use that. So, but going back to the camera, I still didn't show you any animation. I think this is also key, how I do some camera shots. So first of all, if you basically blur everything and look here at your sequencer, what I like to do is I like to have a free floating camera. And I have to say, I met once a really, really nice guy. He was from France. He was French. His name is Philippe. You know who I am. And I like this guy, even if I think that he never really appreciated me so much having me as his colleague. But he is a fantastic camera. His camera work, I always loved it. It was fantastic. And we had some great discussions, and he showed me some tricks, and I always was fascinated from camera work, you know. So, and whatever I can learn, I really appreciate that. But what I wanted to say is, he also always said, like, I want to have a free camera, so I don't want to have any splines or anything like this. And always remember that, because for me it's the same. Think about it. If you have a camera, right, then you actually don't want to be limited. You want to have like a free floating camera that you can use, right? So you can go to any spot and find anything that looks kind of like cinematic or cool, right? Also, what my personal tendency is, like, always find a spot where you almost become somebody spying on something, right? Like, I don't know how to call it, but like you see something from the distance, right? And then that makes the shot very, very unique, because now I can blur out the things in the front, like, or in the back. I can play with my camera, and I can really play with my focal point, right? So that is something what I usually keep in mind when I start creating shots. And storytelling them. What do I really want to showcase? What do I want to show, etc., and focus on. But that being said, is of course in the transform nodes, that's what I usually start working with. I make sure that all those transform nodes are basically have a key at the very, very beginning, and then I don't know, let's put here like 500 keyframes you want to work with, right? And once you have 500 keyframes, make sure that camera is captured till the entire time. And what I also do then here is play this on a loop. So whatever you create here in the animation. And then that's it. The real time is so cool, because if you go now and I go now to frame, let's say 300, and then I am going to move my camera back here, okay? And I do this shot until here. Now watch this. The keys are set. So basically it eases in. It's always like ease in and ease out, and that's what I don't like. I don't prefer that. And then ease out, and that's why you have here the curve editor. And I love the curve editor. It's so cool compared to many, many other software packages I have been working with. I don't want to mention what software packages I was always very frustrated with. But I mean, look, you have here the curve editor, then you have all the transform nodes, rotation nodes, scale nodes, and basically you can select each individually. But of course, basically here I have the curves, the ease in and the ease out, very clearly to see here, where you can control it, you can make it linear. You have different cubic interpolation, tangents, and so on you can play with. I love it because it goes also in real time. And to be honest, like, I have all the tools I really need in order to operate my camera, right? So now watch this. I just made it linear, and now I have a nice smooth camera move going from the left to the right, and that's what I can use, render out super quick then, and of course also use for editing, and in my other software tool I can make edits and so on. Now, not just transform nodes can be recorded, so literally any feature you put down from the camera to the track can be animated. It doesn't matter if it's the exposure compensation, the manual focus point, and so on. So let's do something crazy here. I click on the exposure compensation here at 9, and then I make, like, I don't know, I overexpose it here, underexpose it here, set some of my keys, and overexpose it or bring it back to normal. Now that's it. Look at this beauty. Overexposed, underexposed, and go back to normal. Everything is set. Those keys are also linear, so you can go in here and basically also look at the exposure compensation, see exactly the curves we have been animating and creating. You can also go in here in the curve edit and delete everything, and all the keys are gone. So pretty powerful, amazing, also for previous work and final work. I would say it's camera operation. I love it because I can see so many things in real time, and I can even add sound and everything, and I'll show you then how I did it with the Star Wars fighter. But that's about it. You know, now it's really up to you as the artist to say, like, how you want to direct this. Do you want to start with a blurry shot? You know, what's the exposure? Do you want to start like really fading in, fading out? You know, then getting a feel of it. You need to have a feel as an artist as well. Of course, you can set all the additional keys. Is this maybe a shot where the camera pulls back a little bit, and then you say, you know what, I want to find my focal point. Also here it's underexposed, so I need to bring in some more of my exposure and adjust the camera accordingly. Also, what I like to do is, when you think about it as a human, that a camera shot looks more natural, I also use rotation values. It's called here roll and pitch, and it just makes these shots so much more interesting. Because, for example, you know, what if we start basically with a rotationing like this, and then we go back to flatten it out and go back to a more horizontal shot? You see that? That helps a lot. Also, what I mentioned is like how to set up camera shake blueprints. I created already a very, very simplified tutorial. I don't want to add this here again because, like, it just everything takes then forever. I think this video tutorial is probably already killing you because it's quite a lot of overview. But I think it's really cool. It should help you. And then here, you know, if you decide, like, from the focal point, manual focus, whatever, you want to set here a key. Also keep in mind you always have to set the key first that you can actually animate anything. So also the focal points, because here now you go from non-blurry, okay, so in focus, to out of focus. See that? Okay, and then you go back into focus or whatever. And also in terms of render time, it goes so quick because all I do is I just set this up, JPEG. You know, I render here 4K, 3840 pixels or whatever. It just blows out like crazy. I got questions before in terms of noise. Yes, crank up your samples if you will. Also, as you can see here, for my final renders, when the shadow and everything is basically not present, right? This is because it's not built. The full lighting wasn't built. So keep in mind what I showed you before. We turned on basically previously forced no pre-computed lighting. But if you want to render this out later, I usually check this off, force no pre-computed lighting, and then build the lighting quality in maximum production, because keep in mind it is a hybrid, right? and then the quality is really, really good. Of course, I spoke already briefly also about light maps, quality light maps, changes what you can do, but I also can't go too deep into this for today because it would, it just everything would take too long. But anyways, so yeah, so now what I wanted to show you is look at this tutorial here. Is kind of like setup. You will find all this, of course, in your project file. And I opened the Starfighter animation I did. And I wanted to show you also the sound sequences and how you can bring everything into the different sequences. When you basically look at that scene file, there is also now the X-Wing Starfighter. And I also show you then later full credits to the artist is in the description. I just basically added then the glow material to the engine because I feel like that looks really good. But I also wanted to show you in camera actor 9 here how I was setting up this shot, and what you saw really, I mean, this thing was set up so quickly. It can be done so quickly because like I said before, things in real time let me move really, really quick, especially for previs. I love pre-visualization, I love layout and camera work. I just really do. But watch this. So if I go here to my Cine Camera Actor 9, was it 9? Oh no, it was 7, sorry. So I need to go into 7. Then press G that you get a better view. Look at this. If I scrub through, I see my full camera. But you can also see I brought it into my sequencer, the audio effect as well, which was an audio effect on YouTube or so. But when you play it, so it comes in, and people ask me also, dude, like, how did you do this X-Wing, X-Fighter animation? But it really goes so quick. It goes in real time. It's so fast. This is why I love Unreal. And first I also thought, you know, maybe you want to do it in Blender, or you use it in Maya, or you use 3ds Max or any other software package to do the animation, until I realized that you can do especially those flight animations with blueprints so super nicely inside of Unreal. And that was also for me like very, very important. I said, I don't want to go outside of Unreal. I want to keep, especially for the previous animations like this, inside of Unreal because it's in real time and it goes much, much quicker. So what I wanted to show you here super quick is also, first of all those assets. Either I'm using DataSmith, I'm using Megascans, I'm using free HDRIs or whatever. Even this X-Wing fighter, it's all free. As long as if you give the artists also the credits, right? That's Sketchfab, and you know I bring in. It's also a plugin that goes through with DataSmith. Okay, so when you go to plugins built in, type in DataSmith, and doesn't matter if you use C4D or anything else, but make sure you check also the GLTF importer, right? Because Sketchfab, you can download the GLTF importer with PBR shaders, and everything comes in straight. DataSmith does a fantastic job. Unfortunately, the built-in GLTF importer from Unreal is sometimes buggy. I don't know what it is. DataSmith is doing it perfectly. So basically, that's what I'm using to bring in those assets. So if you have any nice assets, you can bring them in and then, you know, build your own thing. But what I also wanted to show you is when you select, for instance here, then those assets, you get basically all those geometries broken up, right? And then, you know, whatever you pull out here to your scene file as an actor is just one piece, okay? So this is, for instance, the engine. But also what you realize is all the pivot points are always off because those pivot points are originally somehow linked to a group or, you know, from that specific asset. And that's kind of like a pain. So what I did was I am creating blueprints for each of those assets. I'm not getting into this as well. It's a little bit too much, but what I can tell you is I will create for sure another video tutorial following up on this, how to create blueprints for assets. I think this is super important, because once you have this, you can control the pivot points and everything as you want it, because then you can center them and then you can rotate your glider and animate your glider in real time and make this whole thing like super useful, you know. Because if you have all those parts, keep in mind what I did is basically created a blueprint where all those parts are still separated, right, as you saw, but I created then an Uber blueprint in which I said, you know what, this is the total component of my X-Wing fighter, because I want to have like a pivot point for my whole freaking glider, so I can animate and control it. And as you can see, then animation makes really fun, choo, right, because you can go in and just make simple animations. Now in this particular case, you know what I did, once I had the pivot point in my blueprint set up, it's so simple. Basically I just set keys. That means when you go to my sequencer, you can see here's my X-Wing, and that's the X-Wing blueprint as a total. And then I basically said, okay, this is my first location, and the location is out here. And then basically from the speed, I had to identify how quickly is this guy flying and moving. And I went with a camera basically here and said like, okay, let's do the shot. The fighter is coming from here, and then my camera is just looking at my car, and then the glider comes and like I follow with the camera and set it up here. So and that's what I did. And of course it's a little, this is the artwork, I would say, like as a director, or you know, like however you want to call it, DP, whatever you see yourself in the pre-visualization or in the final shot, this is what you can do. I honestly have to say, I think that Unreal is so powerful that when you look at shots like this final shot here, I would almost say if I would have more time, or if I get professional assets, you see, even this is funny now, because you know, if you want to change something, and I think that's also super cool working with your client, or like, let's say the director wants to change something and they say, hey, can you change those assets? Dude, like I can make immediate changes with those assets, whatever I like to, you know. Also what I like to do is I go like in my camera layout, then change it here to my actual camera and stay here in my perspective. Now, why is this super cool? Because I can look through my Cine camera, right? And then I can say, yada, 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 you know, maybe, so turn this off if you scrub through, right? But if I want to change now, for example, the asset here, because it's in my way of my camera, and I basically want to put it maybe a little bit in front of the camera, then this is how you do it. You position it, and you don't have to re-render. It's so nice, right? Because you can make those changes in real time. Now maybe I want to keep it on the ground and looking pretty good. So here we go. And if you play this now with the sound, this is the last thing what I want to show you, how I do the sound. It's looking pretty good. And I play with the zoom with the camera, right? It's kind of like crazy. So I was setting up this X-Wing additional to this, maybe, I'm not shitting you, like it took me 30 minutes to just bring in the X-Wing and do then this one simple shot, right? But here's the thing, the audio, I wanted to show you as well how I do the audio. So I go back to my layout, and then we captured everything also, including the audio. Also audio, super simple. There's my audio folder. I have different WAV files, and Unreal is great with WAV file, or I call it WAV files. And click on it.
My life fades.
Yeah, so that's the Mad Max opening, because I wanted to do a Mad Max scene. And by the way, if somebody's a Mad Max fan and you want to do something, hit me up, man. I would love to do a Mad Max short animation. But anyways, as you can see, those are WAV files, nothing else, right? And then all you do is you have also here like what is it called, like ambient sound. Okay, it's called ambient sound. You can basically drag and drop an ambient sound as an actor on your stage, and then you see, here we go. This is basically all you have to do, because once you have this, then you can go into the details panel, and then you can say, hey, just bring in the audio file. So, and if you imported any WAV file, you just click on import and import a WAV file or a WAV file. Then you just drag and drop it. Okay, so bring it in here, and then when you double click it, you can say, I wanna loop it, and I wanna also change maybe the audio volume to 5 or whatever. Save it, and then you have it in here in your scene file. And if you press play, you will hear it because it's in the game. So now you can see there are two things. It's in the game. Of course, the X-Wing is not in the game, right? But you can see all in here the rest. And also what I did for this one, I felt this was pretty cool, is you have a fall off, an attenuation of the sound. And I said, look, when my camera is further away, I don't hear the sound, but when I'm closer, I can hear the car engine, right? So this is the V8 car engine in a loop. And then what you have to do is you turn on override attenuation, and you also have here then the radius of the fall off. So you have an inner and an outer fall off distance. And basically within that radius, there is then the fall off of the audio you can hear, which is really cool, especially if you have a game. Let's say you have a radio in here, right? Then plays music. Of course, if you get closer to the car, you will hear it louder. And as more you go away, it will fade away. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was basically it for this time. I will have a lot of other tutorials coming up. I hope it was kind of helpful for you. What I also wanted to mention is people said, Bernhard, how can you actually help me? And I really wanted to mention that is that I'm saying, hey, I really help individuals and companies to implement 3D real-time technology to your production workflow. And that really doesn't matter if you're an individual, if you're a big company, or if you're a small company, if it's staff training, if you have a department, if you're this department or whatever. And it really doesn't matter if you're in architecture visualization, if you're in the entertainment industry, if it's for previous work, if it's for anything related in real-time visualization, because Unreal is so powerful that you can also see this through my entire portfolio. I use it literally for everything. That means that's also my experience. I've been working in the film industry. I have been working in the tech industry. I did a lot for agencies in the automotive industry, was working on film, was working on car commercials, a lot of commercials actually. Did also architecture work, did cinematography, was working for like big brands in the retail industry, also like what you see here for design work, pre-visualization, architects, mechanical design, industrial design. It really doesn't matter for real estate developers, and so on. The list goes on. Now, I know for designers and small studio owners, it's always like this question, hey, how can I use this to my benefit? So what is really so cool about it? Why is this real-time technology so helpful for me? And what I try to explain everyone is that when you implement this workflow into your daily production, you can create more work, you're more efficient. If you're a designer, you can get much faster material studies, right? Or so-called CMF studies, so color, material finishes. You see immediately how something looks like. And also what you can provide to your client, that's absolutely crystal clear for me, you can also send them a 3D application, which is called like the game, right? But it's nothing else than, instead of showing just, so to speak, like a still image, right? You can go and send your client like the whole space. So for example, what you also can see here, turn off the light, but this is a retail space, and I created multiple variations in a very short period of time for that retail space. And when you think about it, if you're a designer and you have the possibility to use a digital mock-up place, that's your digital garage, right? To create something like this in a very short period of time, and also communicate your vision and your idea with your client in a very, very new way, that's super powerful. And so far, all the companies and the clients I have been helping in the past, they have been really increasing the outreach, but also, of course, they have been filling up their project books very quickly, because their clients, they loved it, and they said, oh my God, like, I can see your vision immediately, and it's also great for presentations and so on. And of course, last but not least, if you have this implemented into your studio, then you basically blow away all your competitors, because when you present this to your clients and other people don't have it, they already lost. So I also wanted to mention that. And like I said, I would say check out also my blog, check out also all my other resources. You'll find a lot of different things here. And yeah, I would say reach out to me if you have any questions. You can contact me. You see all my contact data, of course, also in the description of my YouTube video. You can go to my homepage. You can reach out through Zoom, send me a classic email, or just call me, whatever you prefer. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, whatever you see, you can reach me wherever, on any almost platform. So that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like my work. I hope you like what I do. I hope you like also the fact that I help other people, artists and small studio owners, and also of course big brands and corporations with pipelines, training, staff training, workflows, software and hardware technology, all related to real-time visualization. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, happy pixeling, and talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.